Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be making excuses instead of taking action. Well, I've got 3 different emails I'm going to go through with you, and the last one, as I've got either 2 or 3 emails from a guy that started following my work 6-8 months ago, and he goes through some of the initial successes that he had when he was writing through me until where he is now, which he says, hey, I'm now a graduate of Coach Corey Wayne University, and he shares some of the success that he's had. And I've got a quote that I wrote on this topic, and then we're going to jump into the first guy's email. The first guy he's coming up with all kinds of excuses and reasons and even details them in here, even provides a link to back up why, in essence, why he doesn't have what he wants in his life. And it really boils down to living authentically with oneself. And when I talk about living authentically, it's like if you're working at a job that you hate, say you really love art and you're an artist at heart and that's what you've always wanted to do, yet you're pushing papers around in an office somewhere, you're not being authentic. In other words, you're living a life because you lack the confidence to obtain what you want. And that is going to affect your ability to show up and put your best foot forward and feel like you're able to be successful at achieving the things that you want to achieve in life. Being authentic and honest and living an honest life with yourself is when you see a beautiful woman across the room or that you encounter her somewhere as you're going about your life, and then you don't go and approach her. In essence, what's going on is you're feeling your sexual attraction, your sexual desire, but you're ignoring it. You're coming up with an excuse. You're coming up with a reason why you can't go over and talk to that person. That's not living an honest life. You're not living an honest life with yourself. And we're going to get into that when I get this first guy's email. But I got a quote that I wrote on this topic that I want to share with you. And then we're going to jump right in and go through and analyze where he's sabotaging himself, because a lot of people suffer from this, whether it's in their personal relationships or their career or their friendships or just how they live their lifestyles. And the quote says, unsuccessful people are usually blinded by their fears. They are afraid of the unknown. They are afraid of taking action. They are afraid of not taking action. They are afraid of success, and they are afraid of failure. Unsuccessful people come up with all kinds of reasons and stories why their lives are not what they once dreamed they could be. These reasons and stories justify their limiting beliefs and model of the world that prevents them from moving forward. They tell themselves that they are either lacking something or it's someone else's fault for their lack of success. They will do almost anything to avoid responsibility for their own lives. By blaming others or their circumstances, they are able to maintain the illusion that they are powerless to help themselves. Success, achieving goals, and making progress in life requires you to take action despite the risks, obstacles, potential for failure, and challenges you will most certainly encounter. In life, you're either a passenger and along for the ride, or you're a pilot and in total control of your destiny and actions. It's your choice and your choice alone. So let's go ahead and jump right into this guy's email. He says, hey Corey, I understand what you're saying. Don't give up. Keep trying. Keep talking to people out there. The more you socialize, the more natural it flows. I appreciate those things. If the looks part was halfway true, and he's talking about how looks is not so much an issue to women, the most important thing to women that they find attractive in a man is confidence. That's a confidence to be vulnerable, to put yourself out there and take a risk and asking her out, getting her phone number, whatever it happens to be, and letting the chips fall where they may. That's being honest with yourself and living an honest life. And women, even if they reject you, they will respect you because at least you're living your truth. He says, and I still have a problem with numbers. You say what you look at expands, or what you focus on expands, and what you look at disappears. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at changes. He says, I understand these things. And I would say, well, you understand them as a mental concept, but you're obviously not really living them. He says, however, my problem still remains. And now he's going to tell us his model of the world. This is his story of why he's not successful. He says, statistically speaking, reviewing the census of births since the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, in the USA, there is 105 males born for every one female. I didn't know that. He says, no party would be good for any guy with those numbers. You say 6 billion people on Earth generally split down the middle. There's almost 7 billion people at this point. He says, well, I care mostly about the USA since it's where I live. So how are these numbers encouraging? Even 3% of the guys that know your stuff, including me because I have read your book many times, is not a good number at all. Do you think this guy's successful? In other words, here's the reason why I can't be successful. The numbers are just not in my favor. And so what this tells me is he's not doing anything. He's read my book a lot, but he's not approaching women. And these are the reasons why. This is how he bullshits himself into not doing anything. Because he's afraid of success, he's afraid of failure, he's afraid of rejection. He's taking no action at all. And he's going, here's all the statistics, here's the spreadsheet, here's my flow chart, here's my graph. He says, especially guys that are very average like myself, it's no surprise that I'm in my mid-30s, in shape, and never had a girl in my life. He says, in other words, it's not my fault. It's the numbers. I live in South Florida, and one of the things I see is fat women with skinny, fit guys. I'm sure you see the same in Orlando, whether it be at a grocery store, streets, or everywhere. Well, where I live in Orlando, I live downtown, and there's a lot of beautiful women everywhere. Most of them tend to be obviously a lot younger, but there's beautiful women everywhere. They're walking everywhere because you live downtown, you're going to walk to restaurants, you're going to walk, there's places to go work out, there's places to go hang out. There's just a lot to do down here, so most people tend to walk or they take those little electric taxis everywhere. But what you focus on expands. So what you're focusing on is you're telling your brain to find all the reasons why, oh, there's only fat chicks down here. And, oh, I don't want to date a fat chick, so look at all the fat chicks. Oh, no pretty girls down here. And then you see a pretty girl and you go, oh, she wouldn't like me, I'm just average anyways. So he doesn't take any action. He takes no risk. He's not living an authentic life. He says this is just proof that guys have to go through extremes to get something. Women have so many choices, they can afford to stay fat. What can I do with these numbers? Not much. Here's the proof, and he even sends a link to this census with the tables. Well, at the end of the day, dude, that's your story. That's what you believe. You're saying it's in the numbers. The numbers aren't in your favor, therefore you can't find anyone. All I can tell by this is that you're scared, you're insecure, and you ain't talking to anybody. You're not making any effort. You're not putting yourself out there. I got people all over the world, like when I say go and ask out 100 women that you find attractive, the numbers are 10 to 12 of them will say yes. You go out on 10 to 12 dates, and out of that, 3 to 5 will actually sleep with you. That's what the numbers work out to be. Doesn't matter where you're from. I got people all over the world that do this. But have you asked out 100 women in the last month? I seriously fucking doubt. You probably have never even asked out 100 women in your life. That's just a fact of life. But this is what your story is. This is what in other words, you're saying the numbers aren't in my favor, there's only fat chicks everywhere. That's just ridiculous. I mean, there's anybody, any average person can look around, there's always pretty girls in the city. Anywhere you live, you're going to find pretty girls. And when you say something like this is what people do to keep themselves stuck in neutral and not doing anything. See, it's the numbers. Therefore, I don't even try. The bottom line is you got to live an authentic life. You got to live a life where you're doing something that you really love for a living, that you enjoy. That's why I place such a big emphasis on this. Because if you're working a job that you hate and you're hanging out with friends that you really don't like and who don't share the same interests, in other words, you're a prostitute. You're prostituting yourself and your feelings, your desires, your needs, and your wants to be what society wants you to be or what other people want you to be. I mean, I was guilty of having a lot of friends when I was in my 20s who really didn't have the same type of goals and values that I had. And I was putting up with it and going along with it because I wanted friends, because deep down I didn't believe I deserved to have the kind of friends that I really wanted to have. And as I got older and I became more confident, I had more experiences, I realized that that was just a bullshit lie that I was telling myself. And the average person, we change our peer group and our group of friends every 7 years. It's like most of them tend to turn over. Like me, I tend to move around a lot, and I travel a lot. I like to experience lots of things, lots of places, lots of cultures, different countries. It's exciting to see those things and to do those things, and you always meet new people. But if you have the attitude of people are shitty and not nice, it doesn't matter what city you live in, that's what you're going to see. That's what you're going to find, because that's what your experience is. But if you're doing something you really enjoy that brings you great pleasure, something that you enjoy for a living, the group of people that you're the people that you're going to encounter in your work or whatever it is that you do for a living for a purpose, you're going to encounter other like-minded people. It's just like the building that I live in is a very affluent type of building. I live with a lot of successful people that have money, and so they have a positive outlook on life. And the friends that I meet, my neighbors that I become friends with, they have other friends that are like-minded, positive, outgoing, optimistic. They're entrepreneurs. They're very successful, doctors, lawyers. They have an outlook that if they encounter a problem in their life, they figure out a way to overcome it. They got a challenge, they figure out a way to overcome it. That's the way they think. That's the way I think. Like attracts like. All the friends that they tend to hang out with, that they introduced me to, and lots of them are women obviously, they all tend to be like-minded people. People who like the same things tend to like each other. That's why it's so important to go and involve yourself in activities and social groups and functions. You know, if you're younger and you like hanging out in bars and nightclubs, well, you're gonna meet a lot of other people who are like-minded people that like to do those kinds of things. And you'll meet people that have the same goals, the same values. If you're into sports, if you're into triathlons, if you're into building model airplanes or model railroads or whatever, and you hang out with people that enjoy doing those kinds of things, you're going to meet other... And if you're a Star Wars nut and you like going to Star Wars conventions, you're going to meet... There's some really fucking hot girls that go to those things. You're going to meet other people that like those same kinds of things. But if you like those kinds of things and you're not involved in them, you're not living an authentic life. When you're living an authentic life, living your truth, following your heart, doing something you really enjoy, and doing it with the kinds of people who enjoy the same kinds of things, you're going to meet other people that like the same kinds of things. But if you're living a lie and you're in essence hanging out in a social circle or a social network of people whose goals and values are not aligned with yours, it's going to be very hard for you to make friends who like the same kinds of things and to meet members of the opposite sex who like to do the same kinds of things. It's going to be really hard for you, if you're living like that, to establish rapport with somebody, because your goals and you're just simply not going to be interested in the same kinds of things that they are, and everything's going to feel forced. But if you're living a life where you're surrounded by groups of people who love the same kinds of things that you do, it's going to be easy, it's going to be effortless to meet other people that are like-minded, that like the same kinds of things, and they'll invite you over to their place. They'll want you to come and hang out with them. They'll invite you to their parties, or their kids' birthday parties and things like that. And you'll meet other people in those social groups. That's just the way the universe works. We live in a vibrational universe. You attract how you act. And if you're living an inauthentic life, if you're not being honest about how you go about your life, in other words, if you're living in somebody else's life, you're going to encounter a lot of difficulty and a lot of struggle, and things are going to be really hard for you. But when you're doing something you really love, and you're into it, and you're excited about it, and you're passionate about it, and you're doing it with other people that have the same kinds of passions that you do, it's going to be easy and effortless, and you're going to constantly be meeting other like-minded people. So let's move on to the second guy's email. And this guy's another success story. This is a guy who's actually taking action upon the things that I talk about. He's living his truth. He's living an honest, authentic life. He says, "Hey coach, your advice has caused me to cry with happiness for the first time in my life last night. 2 weeks ago, I was a virgin, anxious wreck. I've had, it's gone now. I had social anxiety with women and all people in general. Today, I can call myself an alpha male. Just following your videos on YouTube of how to act like one, body language, eye contact, submission from everyone except fellow alpha males. I finished my university exams on Wednesday, and all the anxiety was lifted, and I gained unmatchable confidence and am genuinely established the alpha male in all of my friendship groups. I'm not meaning to be arrogant, cocky, or anything like that. I'm just saying thanks. Well, you're welcome. This is your birthright. You were born to be this way. And when you act in accordance with your truth and following your heart and doing things that you really enjoy and you really love and doing it with the kind of people that like the same things, this is what happens. This is how confidence naturally flows. But if you're living somebody else's life, life is going to be a struggle for you. Everything's going to be a struggle. Your friendships are going to be struggles. Your relationships are going to be struggles. Earning money is going to be a struggle for you. He says, all it took was to act like I own the place in every place I go, and the women make their intentions known. I just have to be the man and make the big moves that she prompts me to do. In other words, women show up, but at the end of the day, you have to be authentic and act upon those urges and those impulses, that sexual attraction that you feel inside, either to get a phone number or to start a conversation or to make a date right then and there on the spot. Either a few days or a few hours later or right then and there. That is your first date. He says, just basically following everything you've mentioned on your YouTube channel. I'm 18, 6'1", and I took home the hottest girl in the club, and I cried with happiness last night that I'd finally got where I wanted to be so much for so long. Just discovering the secret to the dating game and can't wait for a life of this. 18 years old, dude. I wish I had a memory like that when I was fucking 18. My memories at 18 were more like the first email that I experienced because I wasn't living an authentic life. I wasn't being honest with myself. I was moving in the right social circles, but because of all the fear that I had inside, I'd show up, I'd be the guy that was too nice of a guy, too compliant, letting people walk all over me, not standing up for myself, not communicating my sexual interest when it was there, always holding it back, always holding it within. I wasn't being honest and congruent with myself. Instead, I'd take the friendship route. And I was always getting rejected. Why? Because I wasn't being honest. I wasn't being honest with me. And women can sense that. They can pick up on that. And therefore, I didn't do very well. He says, thanks for everything, Corey. I can't wait to read the book. It's on delivery. It's amazing. That guy, just from watching videos, even though that's not what I teach to do, you got to read the book to learn the fundamentals. He was able to pick up enough from the videos to make a few subtle changes in how he was showing up. And boom, he took the hottest girl home in the club. That's fucking awesome, dude. Congratulations. Good for you. You're leading by example. So let's get into the third email. And what's interesting, I'm going to read a couple of emails, short messages I got from this guy. These were from about January of this year until now, which obviously now we're in June. So it's about over the course of 6 months. And so back in January, one of his messages, he said, hey, Corey, I just found your website about 10 days ago, and you have already changed my life. No, I haven't met the girl of my dreams, but I had a fun and successful date on Wednesday and banged a fat chick last night after about 4 hours of hanging out. It's a win for him. He's happy. He's making progress. Repetition's the mother of skill. That's how you get better at these things. He says, for the first time in years, I'm having fun again. I like myself. As more money becomes available, I will send it to you. Well, I always appreciate the donations. Thank you. He says, I'll even tell you a short story that's so sad that you might even feel compelled to paste it on your website as a message of hope to other readers. If this guy can turn it around, anyone can. Thanks, dude. And here's the second message a few days later after this first one. This is also from January. He says, hey, Corey, I'm sorry to tell you that I fucked up with the good-looking girl I went out with. I did a lot of things right, and since I've been reading your book and listening to your videos. However, after I got her back to my place, I acted too interested and even told her I was interested. He says, what a boob. So you notice he's with the girl he's really not that into and things just flow. This girl went back to his place. So what happened, he literally talked her out of sleeping with him. And so what happened was he put her on a pedestal. he communicated that he placed more value on being with her than she placed on being with him. In other words, he was still communicating, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve you. And he's not being congruent with himself when he's doing that. Therefore, it blew up in his face. He says, oh well, I learned today that there will be no second date. I'm way too old to be making these mistakes, but you're never too old to learn, right? Abso-fucking-lutely. It's never too late to become the person you're meant to be. He says, anyway, for once, I know what I did wrong. I'll do better next time. You're a man among men. That's awesome, dude. Good for you. He's got the right attitude. He made some mistakes. He realized, you know what? He took responsibility. He said, I fucked up. But you know what? I can do something about it. And he did. And let's hear what happens. Fast forward 6 months later. He says, hey, Coach, as of Thursday morning, I now consider myself a graduate of Coach Corey Wayne University. I found your site about 1 week before I went out with one of the hotter women I have met in the last 10 years. 1 week's worth of study was enough to get me through most of the date, but I blew it at the end by running my mouth. Now this is what's cool. This guy is living an authentic life to where he's got a social circle that supports his passions, his goals, his dreams. He says, and like attracts like. And I wrote about this in my book. One of the women that I date, it took me about like a year and a half to really, back and forth. She was kind of in the same social circle at the time that I was. And so she was also doing a lot of work for my employees. So when things were going sideways, she was still coming to the office. She was still involved with the energy field of my life, if you will. And so when I backed off, eventually she started showing up at the office more and just accidentally running into me. And then she would feel comfortable and she'd reach out, she'd start pursuing. And I wrote about this in my book. He says, she's a member of my social circle who had just moved back to town, so I had ample opportunity to either dig a deeper hole for myself or be patient, indifferent, and crack jokes at her expense. In other words, treating her like the bratty little sister. 90% of the time, you're the charming James Bond, and 10% of the time, you treat her like the bratty little sister. He says, it took 5 months, but she finally initiated sex with me. I was drunk, dead tired, and we were on an uncomfortable couch. Rather than make excuses for my performance like I used to, that is really massively important. I'm going to read that again. He says, rather than make excuses for my performance, in other words, apologizing, and, oh, I'm sorry, Your Highness, I didn't please you. He says, I merely finished and made a slightly demeaning wisecrack about her. She shook her head, but I could tell she respected me for it. In other words, he's living his truth. He's making light of the situation. He's not taking it personally. He's not acting like he's not worthy and he doesn't deserve her. He says, since I found your book, I have done some really positive things with women, but I hadn't really felt successful until now. You deserve every penny you make. I wish you all the best. And so you can see, this particular guy, it took him 6 months to get it right with the girl that he really wanted, which was who he originally found my work about in the first place. It took me a year and a half, and I didn't really have a good coach that could tell me all the little things that I needed to know. So it took 3 times as long, but this is why it's so important to have lots of options in your life. That's why, especially if you've just gone through a recent breakup, or you've got a woman that you met you really liked, it's important to have options for you. So you're not just sitting around focusing on one particular girl and waiting for the phone to ring. This way you can be going out and dating other women and improving and honing your skills. Remember, repetition is the mother of skill. It's just like Aristotle said thousands of years ago. Excellence is not a singular act. It's a habit. You are what you do repeatedly. And here you've got this guy who finally hooked up with a girl who, and like this one woman I was telling you about, I remember the first time we made love, it wasn't the best sex I've ever had, but I'll tell you what, afterwards it's like, man, it totally took away any of that awkwardness and that weirdness between us. Now we were totally physically intimate with one another. And the second time, the third time, the fourth time that we made love, it was much different. It was just magical at that point. She no longer was holding back, and I was no longer holding back. And now I felt really comfortable because now that fear barrier had been lifted. It's because really this shit's all in our heads. It's all stuff that we tell ourselves. Just like the very first email that I read where that guy's saying, oh, well, you know, the numbers just aren't my favorite because I'm an average looking guy. I can't get a girl. That's what he says. But the reality is he's really not taking any action. He's not being authentic with his truth like these last two guys whose emails I've read. He's, you know, the first guy, he's ignoring his impulses and he's suppressing his feelings because he's afraid of being rejected. And therefore he goes through this long diatribe, but here's the real reason why I'm not successful, because the numbers aren't my favor. That's bullshit. Here's two examples of two other guys that even though they bumbling and fumbling around, bottom line is they still got it right. The second guy, 18 fucking years old, it's like, dude, it's like, I'm so happy. I would have loved to have had memories like that when I was 18 years old. It wasn't until I got into my late 20s, early 30s, I really started having those kinds of memories. This dude's like fucking, can you imagine where he's going to be at when he's my age? I'm 44 now. I mean, that's fucking awesome, dude. I'm so happy that all the shit that I went through, an 18-year-old dude can learn from me and have some great experiences and just have kick ass all through his 20s, 30s, all through his life, not have to go through all the heartache and the rejection and all the things that I went through. And it's like, that's just awesome, you know? It makes me happy knowing that other people benefit from everything that I've been through in my life. That's why I love what I do. This is so exciting. So if you'd like to get my help personally, the quickest way is to book a paid phone, Skype, or email coaching. You can choose any of those options by going to my website, clicking the products tab at the top of your screen, and just following the instructions. And I will talk to you soon.